Hello everyone. This is the fourth part of the story I'm Voldemort. Chapter 26. Realization. Mimsy popped Tom, who is under a polyjuice potion, to the indoor apparition area of Gringotts as usual. They then asked for a luck and got a meeting with him fairly easily. The goblins that guard the apparition point couldn't recognize Tom, but they could tell who Mimsy was. Knowing that Mimsy's master liked to wear a mask, it clicked in their heads that he was under a polyjuice potion. Tom could care less that they knew and didn't bother to hide it. All he cared about was that they don't know who he is. They could be suspicious all they want, as it didn't matter to Tom. He and Mimsy were escorted to a meeting room, where Aluk was waiting patiently. "Hello, Aluk. How have your investments with my money been going?" Tom says as he takes a seat with Mimsy standing close behind him. "Straight to business, I see. Although I liked the old mask, polyjuice is far better when concealing your identity. I will be needing an oath that it is you though." Aluk wasn't surprised as he was already told of Tom's new disguise. Tom nodded and gave the oath on his magic easily. He then performed a quick lumos to show that he hadn't lost his magic. "Now, about my investment. What's going on and what have you been doing?" Tom asks as he relaxes into his chair. "I've compiled a list of investments that I've made for you to look over." Aluk says and snaps his fingers. A few pieces of paper appear in his hands and he passes them over to Tom. "Here you go." Tom takes the papers and starts reading them over. Written on the papers are properties he now owned and companies that he now had some stock in. As Tom reads the paper, he notices a few companies that he recognized that would do well in the future. He was sure to emphasize to Aluk that he wanted more stock in these companies. As he was browsing the pages, his eyes went wide and his mouth dropped open. On the page in front of him, he sees a name that couldn't possibly be real. There's no way that this is real. Tom thought as he rubs his eyes to clear away whatever was causing him to see something like this. "Is something the matter?" Aluk asks as he notices Tom's odd behavior. "Tell me about Stark Industries?" Tom asks as his whole aura became serious. "One moment." Aluk says and a paper appears in his hands. Stark Industries is run by its founder Howard Stark, a great pioneer in different types of Muggle technology. He mainly supplies the United States Armed Forces with different and innovative Muggle weapons. The company is still rather new, but Stark is a genius that has brought it from nothing to a main supplier of the United States military. "I saw an opportunity to buy a large chunk of stock, so I jumped on it as soon as I could." "You currently own 5% of the company." Aluk explains. "Holy shit. Am I in a crossover?" Tom thought as he contemplates his predicament. This is far worse than it was before. At least all I had to worry about before was Dumbledore, Grindelwald, and possibly Harry Potter. That is if he's even born with all that I'm changing. Now I have to worry about beings like Dormammu, Thanos, Loki, Ultron, and the list goes on and on. The worst part is that I've never read the comics. I only watched the movies and TV shows. I can only hope that this is a crossover with the MCU and not the whole Marvel universe. Tom took a deep breath and brought himself under control. "Is there something wrong with Stark Industries?" Aluk asks as Tom doesn't seem happy to hear about it. "No, in fact, buy as much stock as you possibly can. I have a feeling that this company will be huge in the future. Also, I'm going to all you some other company names when I have the time." Tom says and skimmed the rest of the list for any other companies that could shed some light on what type of world he lives in. Nothing else on the list brought back any memories of the MCU, so Tom finished his business with Aluk and went home. When he arrived back in his room with Mimsy, he sat on his bed and thought of what to do now. He planned to get strong enough to wipe the floor with Grindelwald and take his wand. After completing that, Tom would take the place of Dumbledore as the second coming of Merlin and get a powerful wand out of it. He'd then spend the rest of his life relaxing, practicing magic, and preparing for Harry Potter to be born. That is if he were to even be born after all the things Tom has and will change. Now, Tom has to change his plans. Well, maybe not change, but definitely add to them. He has villains and organizations to look out for that would gladly experiment on witches and wizards, as they did on the mutants in X-Men. Speaking of the X-Men, are mutants in this world as well? If they do exist in this world, then Tom has to worry about kids with powers that they don't understand running around as well as the villains from those movies as well. That is once again if this world is the cinematic world. If it's not, then Tom is completely and utterly fucked. I just need to explore a bit and see if things match up from the movies or comics. It's a good thing that I have the whole of Christmas break to look into this. Oh, wasn't the Ancient One in the comics a man? So, if I were to go to Camartage, I could find out if it's the comic world or the cinematic. Also, I could learn some pretty powerful sorcery if I play my cards right. Tom thought and smiled at the new plan coming into view before him. Seeing as in the movies Camartage was in Nepal, Tom sent Mimsy to buy him a portkey to and from there. He knew that there are sanctums all over the world, but Tom has no idea where they are. There's probably one in every major city, but at what address? Tom didn't know, so he would have to do things the hard way. By the time Mimsy arrived with the portkeys, it was already late, so Tom would set out tomorrow. The next morning, Tom did his usual exercises before leaving via portkey to Nepal. He appeared in a random side alley of a dirt street in Kathmandu, Nepal. As Tom didn't know the common language, he would walk in crowds of people and constantly ask where he could find Camartage. After a whole day of this, no one responded to him with any sort of answer. Knowing that this may take a while, Tom booked a nice hotel to get some sleep. He would wake up early the next day and repeat the same actions of today. Going from one crowd to another, hoping that someone knows where to go. I hope I can find this place soon. Although I am a bit scared of what the Ancient One will know about me. Tom thought as he drifted off to sleep in his nice hotel room. Chapter 27, Camartage. After a week of constantly asking strangers where to find Camartage, Tom finally ran into someone that knew of something. He wasn't even looking for it at the time. Once Tom finished a long day of running around, he went to a food stand to get a quick bite to eat. While eating, he talked to the owner, who happened to speak English. Tom told the owner of how he was running around all day looking for a place called Camartage. To his complete surprise, the owner knew of someone that has mentioned a place with that same name. After speaking with someone that knew a guy, who knows another guy, that knows another guy. Finally, Tom was given an address in Kathmandu that hopefully lead to Camartage. Once he arrived at the address, he knocked on the door with hopeful vigor. The door opens and a bald man in robes answers the door. I would like to speak with the Ancient One, please. Tom asks, and the man's eyebrows knit together in confusion. She's not expecting you. The man mutters, barely audible enough for Tom to hear. She? This is looking good. Also, how is she not expecting me? She's supposed to see the different possible futures throughout time with her infinity stone. Tom thought as the monk before him had no idea what to do. Every time the Ancient One would have a guest, she would let the doorman know what to do beforehand. Whether to send them away or guide them inside. Never had someone come to see the Ancient One and she didn't inform them about it. Knowing that this was an odd anomaly, the monk guided Tom inside and brought him to a meeting room. Wait here. I'll inform the Ancient One of your arrival, he said, and left the room. Mimsy. Tom called, and his head elf appears with a pop. Yes. She answers happily. Can you get me some tea for two and some snacks to go with it? Tom asks, and Mimsy snaps her fingers. A tea set appears on the table along with some assorted baked goods. Mimsy snaps her fingers again, and the teapot moves to pour Tom a cup. Thank you, Mimsy. He thanks her and takes a small sip. It's perfect as usual. You can leave now. Thanks again. After Mimsy pops away with a happy smile, Tom didn't have to wait long for a bald woman dressed in robes to walk through the door. She entered the room excitedly with her eyes curiously scanning the room for her guest. Yes. She looks exactly the same as in the movies. It's looking like I'm in the MCU. This is so much better than the complete Marvel universe. Tom thought, happy that he wouldn't have to worry about unknown villains cropping up. Would you like some tea? He asks, copying how she would greet guests. Yes, I would love some. The Ancient One replies and sits across from Tom as he pours her a cup. I've been waiting for our meeting to take place, she says as she sips her tea. I thought you didn't see me coming? Tom asks. Oh, I didn't, but I could tell that the universe itself was hiding something from me. Blank spots in time that I couldn't see started appearing. As these blank spots started to appear, the possible futures started changing for the better. I wasn't sure if it would be you, but now that I've met you, I can tell 100% that it is you. You're the one that I can't see. I didn't think that you would be a wand waver though. Your kind has been in hiding for a long time, she says as she stares at Tom as a mathematician would look at an equation. Well, it's nice to know I'm protected from time snoopers. I'm Thomas Marvolo Riddle, but everyone calls me Tom. Tom says as he waits to see if she has a bad reaction to his name. If she does have a bad reaction, Tom may need to explain the merger to her. He can't have one of the most powerful people on planet Earth thinking he's some evil Dark Lord. After all, without the soul merge, Tom would have gone on to become a murderer, baby killer, rapist, and all-around piece of human garbage. You already know of me, but I'll say it anyway. I'm the Sorceress Supreme of planet Earth, but you may call me the Ancient One, she says and doesn't seem to react to Tom's full name at all. Once again, it's nice to meet you, Ancient One. Do you mind if I ask you a question? Tom asks and the Ancient One nods her head signaling him to ask away. How do you feel since you don't know how this conversation will go? It's completely and utterly refreshing. Not knowing what is going to happen next is both scary and freeing at the same time. She answers and continues to sip her tea. Can I ask a question? Sure, go ahead. Tom replies. How is it that I can't see you with the time stone? She asks, hoping for an answer to the problem that has plagued her. I'm sorry to say, but I have no idea. I have a bit of knowledge about the future myself, which is how I know about you, so I came here to learn everything I can about the mystic arts. Tom said as he thinks why he would be excluded from her vision of the future. It could be because of the merger, or any number of other weird possibilities. Tom thought, but he wouldn't reveal that to the Ancient One. Sigh, I was hoping for some answers, but it's all right. She sighs but shrugs it off after a moment of thought. As for you learning here, that will have to come at a price, I'm afraid, she says as her demeanor becomes a lot more serious. If this is about protecting the Earth from mystical threats, then I'm willing to agree on 2 conditions, Tom says, and the Ancient One motions for him to continue. It's fairly simple. You only call me when you absolutely need me. I don't have time to be called for every little threat to Earth's borders. If others can handle it, I don't want to be bothered. On the other hand, if others cannot handle a certain threat, I would be more than happy to help as much as I can. Your second condition? She asks. I want to be taught by you, personally. Tom states plainly. I accept your conditions. Welcome to Kamartaj, she agrees immediately. The Ancient One was more than happy with recruiting Tom under these conditions. For the first condition, many sorcerers can take Tom's place for easier threats, so that one wasn't very hard for her to agree to. As for Tom being taught by the Ancient One, she wants to be as close as possible to him, so she can figure out why she's unable to see him with the time stone. Thank you for having me, teacher, Tom says respectfully. Although, I'm attending Hogwarts at the moment, so I'll only be able to study here during breaks. I see, then we should get started immediately, shouldn't we?" she says, and Tom got a horrible feeling from her tone of voice. "Open your mind," she says as she taps Tom on the forehead. Chapter 28. Novice Sorcerer. After going through the trippiest experience of his entire life, Tom was taken into Camartage as a student of the Ancient One. At first, the Ancient One asked if he had parents, as she didn't want to just take him from his family. She then learned that Tom is an orphan from London. They then tricked the matron into thinking Tom was accepted into a summer study program that he signed up for in Hogwarts. He was swiftly permitted to attend the program by an ecstatic matron. Now she doesn't have to worry about the children's safety all year round. He was given a white robe to identify him as a novice, and a room to sleep in. A few of the masters under the Ancient One weren't very happy with taking in a child, but they could say nothing as Tom is one of the few personal students the Ancient One has ever taken. He also the only student currently studying under her at the moment. Openly badmouthing him would be very close to openly badmouthing the Ancient One herself. Although that was only a very minor amount of the more grumpy sorcerers. The majority accepted Tom with either indifference or open arms. Getting his room makes Tom remember the scene with the Wi-Fi password, and that makes him remember that he has no Wi-Fi. Why must the past be so cruel? When will I once again lay around all day watching YouTube and eating potato chips? Tom remembered the good old days. Christmas break went by quickly as Tom spent the short time he had studying under the Ancient One. The Ancient One first sent him to the library to start studying dead languages. Tom wasn't allowed to learn anything until he could understand the material. With his perfect recall, learning every language thrown at him was fairly easy. From Latin, Sanskrit, Ancient Greek, to Biblical Hebrew, Tom knew them all after a few days' worths of reading. Of course, that doesn't mean he's any good at speaking them though. That will take some time and practice to get down. After getting the magic down, he was given private lessons from the Ancient One and a list of books to read for homework. He learned what their type of magic or sorcery is. It's fairly different from the Wizarding World's brand of magic. Magic for sorcerers is divided into 3 different categories: personal energies, universal energies, and dimensional energies. Supposedly, all magic is built on the concept that all realities can be reshaped by tapping into the existing power that is found in either themselves, the universe, or other dimensions. Personal energies are those derived from the life force of the sorcerer, which is different from wizards/witches as they are born with magic inside them and don't have to use life force to power anything. Personal energies can only be used to power abilities developed through mental studies, and are thus limited to mental abilities such as astral projection, hypnotism, telekinesis, and telepathy. However, because it is known that the continual use of such energies will fatally deplete the individual by consuming their life force, sorcerers must also learn to harness external forces through meditation techniques and trained willpower. It is known that the students enrolled at K'un-Lun are trained to harness an internal force known as Qi as a means to strengthen their own minds and willpower, as well as their physical capabilities to varying degrees. One of the easier sources that a sorcerer can draw power from are the universal energies of their home dimension. Universal energies can be used for conjuration, transmutation, and teleportation purposes, and are commonly used in battle to create shields and weapons of energy. Universal spells usually require specific gestures and/or words in order to be activated. Some universal energies can also be used by astral bodies who contain a dimensional anchor in the form of an artifact or an individual. For example, the Ancient One was able to force Tom's consciousness to safely travel throughout the multiverse and to return to their physical world by using herself as an anchor. This then sent Tom into the biggest LSD trip of both of his lives. Lastly, dimensional energies are those that are drawn from other planes of existence throughout the multiverse or are bestowed upon a sorcerer from one or more extra-dimensional entities. These entities must be entreated by a sorcerer using ritualistic spells and possibly a promise or sacrifice of some method. For example, Caecilius and his followers promised to give Dormammu access to the Earth dimension in exchange for eternal life and superior power. Speaking of Caecilius, he hasn't joined Camartage yet, and Tom isn't even sure whether he's born already. Once their agreement had been made, Dormammu proceeded to bestow his power unto the Zealots. However, the Ancient One has proven that some such dimensional energies can be channeled without the awareness or participation of the entities involved, as she successfully managed to siphon power from the dark dimension for hundreds of years without any allegiance or loyalty to Dormammu. Tom didn't talk about these things to her, as he didn't know how to bring it up. He was also sure that she was aware of what will and could happen in the future. Though Tom won't let his teacher die as she did in the movie, but to do that, he will need to get strong enough to sever her connection to the dark dimension and somehow keep her alive and kicking. That will be something he has to worry about sometime later on down the line. Now, Tom just has to focus on learning everything he can and put in some hard work. Most sorcerers, especially those that harness extra-dimensional energies, such as the masters of the mystic arts, train in the art of spellcasting, which was explained to Tom by the Ancient One as being conceptually the same as runes and a ray to alter the world around him. Achieving specific magical effects can require certain words, gestures, or rituals of some sort, while others may require the use of relics and other items imbued with supernatural power. Furthermore, these effects can be accompanied by the appearance of sigils, glyphs, runes, and mandalas, often in the form of projected constructs of energy. The first real practical lesson he had was about eldritch magic, and he has to practice writing some arrays in the air with it. He was put in a class filled with people 3 or more times his age, and they would constantly draw upon eldritch energy to make a circle in the air, then punch it away. The bigger your circle, the better you become at drawing that energy. Some people had tiny circles and others could make some as big as them. Those people would be moved into the next class up. Tom thought that this would be easy, as he has been using and studying a different brand of magic for a bit now. Boy, was he wrong. He just had a hard time harnessing magic that wasn't inside of him. This speed bump didn't last long though, as Tom would work on drawing eldritch energy almost constantly. Hard work is the fastest way to success, and Tom is no stranger to hard work. He's been constantly studying and working his body and magic ever since the merger of souls. Adding one more thing to the list isn't going to stop him from moving forward. A day before Tom had to leave for Hogwarts, he was mindlessly trying to draw a circle in the air among his other novice disciples. Suddenly, a small spark appeared in the air in front of him as he moved his hand. At first, he thought he could be seeing things, but he did it again, and a spark danced before his eyes. A blinding smile appeared Tom's his face at his accomplishment. He's been working at this same exercise for weeks, and he finally harnessed and manipulated eldritch magic. Back to Hogwarts soon. From one school to the other. I need to find some time to take a vacation sooner or later. Chapter 29, Meatheads. Before leaving Camartage, Tom was able to get his circle to be about as big as his hand. The Ancient One was happy about his progress, but this is only a minor step down the long path of becoming a master of the mystic arts. A few days before leaving, Tom celebrated his 12th birthday. No one knew except Mimsy, who brought him a special cake and sang to him in his room. Tom decided to not tell anyone about his birthday, as he wasn't one for celebrating it in either life. He still had no idea how Mimsy knew it was his birthday in the first place. What's funny is that both souls that merged actually had the same birthday. Upon leaving, Tom was sent off by his new teacher and a few of the friendly masters and disciples. Today is the day he has to take the train to Hogwarts, so he already had everything ready. Mimsy popped him to an empty alley by Kong's Cross, and Tom finally was able to walk through the brick wall. It wasn't as thrilling as he thought it would be, but it was still an experience he would remember. On the train, he met up with his one and only friend, Druella. They talked about their workout plan, and Druella was showing off some things she received for Christmas. They sat at the back of the train as not to be bothered by anyone. That didn't seem to work as a knock could be heard at the door when the train set off. Enter. Tom calls and Druella looks annoyed as she was in the middle of talking before the knock. The door opens and on the other side are the most annoying of the Slytherins Tom and Druella have had to deal with. Cornelian Crabbe and Gabriel Goyle. Both of them look like dumber versions of their grandchildren. They're in 5th year and the loudest of the people that badmouth Tom and Druella. The second they see Tom and Druella sitting peacefully in the compartment, their happy faces turn sour as they look down their noses at the 2 first years. Get lost, Rosier, and take your pet mudblood with you on the way out. Meathead number 1 exclaimed as Meathead number 2 shooed them out of the compartment. Tom seeing them being unreasonable quirks an eyebrow at them. They haven't done anything like this before, but then again bullying usually escalates. This must be that escalation. First, verbal bullying, and now they want to start controlling where Tom and Druella are allowed to be. Sooner or later even that would escalate, so Tom needs to nip this in the bud right now. We were here first. Find another compartment or sit with us if you want, but we aren't leaving. Tom says casually as he reaches for his wand just in case. The 2 boys weren't expecting that, as they just stood there for a moment. They looked at each other for a moment and both didn't seem to be happy about what Tom said. Tom could practically hear what they were thinking. Something about mudbloods not listening to their betters or something similar. I don't think you heard me. I said leave the compartment now. Muggleborn filth like you should just keep your mouth shut. Meathead number 1 repeats as his buddy nods along with every word. Sigh, like I said before, we aren't going anywhere. If you want to sit with us, take a seat. If not, then please go because you're interrupting our conversation. Tom says as nicely as possible with his wand hidden in his grasp. Tom's nice reply seemed to somehow anger them even further. Meathead number 1 went for his wand as his face is red with anger. Meathead number 2 wasn't expecting to draw his wand, so he was a bit behind his friend. As Meathead number 1 grasped his wand, Tom had already aimed his wand at him. Expelliarmus. Tom called and thunderous magical energy escaped Tom's wand and struck Meathead Crabbe, Meathead number 1. Crabbe's wand goes flying into Tom's open hand, and he immediately aims at Goyle, who was a bit slow in the draw. Before Tom could fire another spell, he hears Druella call out her own spell as well. Expelliarmus. She said and Goyle's wand falls at her feet. Both Tom and Druella now had their wands trained on the 2 meatheads. Crabbe and Goyle wore stunned faces as they didn't expect to be bested so easily. Especially against a couple of first years. Not to mention, one of them is a mudblood that knew nothing of magic before his letter arrived. They wanted nothing more than to teach these kids a lesson, but without wands they're powerless. Now, they stand there without a clue as to what to do anymore. You can leave now. We'll be keeping your wands until we arrive at Hogwarts. There they will be delivered to Slughorn, along with an explanation of what happened here. Goodbye. Tom says as Druella picks up the wand at her feet. Both Tom and Druella haven't put down their wands and they won't until Crabbe and Goyle leave. Meanwhile, Crabbe and Goyle and just stood there torn between their instincts to teach these kids a lesson, and the fear of whatever spells they would fire at them if they tried anything. Seeing that neither of them was leaving, Tom looked over at Druella, and they came to a nonverbal understanding. Both nodded at each other and aimed their wands at the intruders. Since you seem to have forgotten how to walk out of a door, let us give you a helping hand. Tom calls and they both call out a spell at the same time. Flipendo they call and both aim at a different target. Tom's spell hits Crabbe and Druella's hits Goyle. The 2 5th years get sent flying out of the door and onto the hallway floor. Tom then casually walks to the door and closes it in their faces. Once the door is closed, Tom locks it and takes a seat next to Druella, who lets out an annoyed groan. You know this is going to cause problems, correct? Druella says in exasperation. Possibly, but I doubt the council will get involved. At least, not directly. Tom says after a moment of thought. But some things have to be done. I don't mind people talking shit about me. They don't matter to me, and I could care less about whatever garbage spews from their mouths. But I won't be dictated on where to go and what to do. If we let them get away with that, situations like this would repeat. Yeah, but something will happen because of this, Druella says. True, but we'll be ready for whatever that might be. Chapter 30, Inbred Faction. When the train arrived at Hogwarts, everyone took the carriages this time. While they were switching from the train to the carriages, Tom saw some members of the council with annoyed looks on their faces. Trailing behind them were Crabbe and Goyle with their heads down in submission. They must have told the council what happened, Druella says as she eyes Crabbe and Goyle. No, they most likely made themselves the victims. If you were them in the situation where they lost to a girl, no offense of course, and a mudblood, would you tell the truth? Hell no, they most likely made themselves the victim, but I doubt everyone on the council believes them, Tom says as he takes a seat next to Druella in the carriage. Sigh, this is so annoying, Druella says as they start riding towards the castle. When they arrive at the castle, Dumbledore is there to meet everyone as usual. Everyone is brought to the Great Hall for a welcome-back feast. As everyone is settling in, Tom and Druella walk up to the staff table and ask to speak with their head of house in the halls. Slughorn happily agrees, as Tom is easily becoming one of his favorite students. His work is impeccable and every potion he brews has been nothing but flawless. As they step outside the Great Hall, Tom could feel the eyes on them from the Slytherin table. Tom then went on to explain what happened and handed over the wands they confiscated. Slughorn didn't look surprised, as he is the head of Slytherin House, and it's hard to miss two of his snakes being shunned by the rest. He simply sighed and said that he would take care of it. He also mentioned something about both Crabbe and Goyle being constant troublemakers. All right, go and fill your stomachs. I'll speak to Misters Goyle and Crabbe after the feast, Slughorn said as they all went back to the Great Hall to eat. After their meal, Crabbe and Goyle were called to Headmaster Dippet's office, along with Slughorn and Dumbledore. It was later learned that they were given detention for the rest of the school year for attempting to assault younger students. It was also said that if it were to happen again, they would be expelled from Hogwarts, which is something that will get you shunned from society. That must have scared them a bit, as they haven't bothered Tom and Druella since. Although, they still constantly badmouth Tom and Druella openly. As Tom thought, the council didn't call them for anything related to the incident on the train. Although, a few of the more outspoken blood purists have been becoming more and more hostile towards Tom and Druella. Nothing confrontational, but more and more each day Tom's and Druella's names repeatedly keeps coming out of their mouths. So much so, that a new faction within Slytherin House was created and Tom calls it the Inbred Faction. They mostly spew their racist opinions about Muggles, Muggleborns, and half-bloods. Not to say that the rest of Slytherin isn't racist, as they definitely are, but the Inbred Faction are the crazies that go a bit too far. It's good that this faction is usually ignored by the more sane Slytherins that are on the side of simply shunning Tom and Druella. Why waste their time with mudblood filth, after all? This was all fine and dandy to Tom and Druella. Tom could care less about what a bunch of inbreeds say, so as long as they left him alone, Tom would stay low for a bit longer. Druella was a bit annoyed at the inbred faction, but after some thought, she decided to follow Tom's lead and at least pretend to not care. Maybe someday she could learn how Tom could just brush stuff off so easily. Time skip, end of the first year. After a long year of breezing through classes, Tom finally finished his first year of Hogwarts. During the year, he continued to reign at the top of all first years in grades. When he wasn't in class, Tom would train and study with Druella. She has advanced in leaps and bounds since meeting Tom, so much in fact, that she could probably beat a sixth year in a duel. She attributes all of her growth to her friend Tom Riddle, of course. Becoming friends with him may have ruined her reputation, but he made up for it with his training regimen that she has been going through. Just the enhancement in her magic reserves was enough to sacrifice her reputation for. When Tom wasn't doing his training with Druella, he would sneak off into the ROR and spend his time dabbling with things not taught in Hogwarts. He mostly spent his time on dark magic and rituals, including runes and arrays, as they go along with rituals. This is where he left off before the Christmas break. Other than that, he continued his practice in Eldritch magic as he did at Camartage. By the end of the first year, Tom could finally make a circle 2 times his size. Tom did try to spend some time on one other thing, and that was legilimency. The books he found in the ROR stated that legilimency is the act of magically navigating through the many layers of a person's mind and correctly interpreting one's findings. A person who practices this art is known as a legilimens. Muggles might call this mind reading, but practitioners disdain the term as naive. Tom sees it as more of mind surfing, as most people don't have organized minds. It's a mess in an untrained person's mind, and the only way to navigate is to surf. Tom learned this by constantly practicing on passing younger Muggleborns in the hallway. Every time a Muggleborn would make eye contact with him, Tom would activate his legilimency and see what he could find. After a few mess-ups where a few kids fainted in the halls, Tom started getting this mind-reading thing down. Tom wasn't doing it out of spite towards the Muggleborns, but they haven't had a chance to study occlumency, so they wouldn't be able to tell it was happening. Like this, Tom learned that reading someone's mind is hard, and you have to surf through a bunch of nonsense information to get to what you want. On the other hand, people with an organized mind would be easier to get information from. Although, that person's mind would also be protected, so that isn't necessarily true. A goodbye feast took place and Slytherin won the useless house cup. Many of the saner in Slytherin house knew that Tom was the main reason they won the house cup. They wouldn't say it out loud or thank him for it, but they knew. After a long train ride back to King's Cross, Tom found a nice alleyway, where he called for Mimsy. She popped him to the London Sanctum, and there he was brought to Camartage. The second he got into a meeting with the Ancient One, Tom showed off how big his circle had become. It may be something minor to the Ancient One, but never has Tom had to work so hard in magic before. He was proud of his hard work and ready to move on to the next step. Chapter 31, Big Time Skip, Part 1. Time Skip, September 1st, 1940. A 13-year-old Tom Riddle arrives at Hogwarts for his third year along with his trusty sidekick Druella Rosier. Tom has been attending Hogwarts and Camartage for 2 years, and he is now arriving at Hogwarts for his third year. Upon returning to Camartage after his first year ended at Hogwarts, Tom was immediately passed into the next level of training. This training was in the use of the sling ring, something that Tom would gladly use over the annoyingly disorienting apparition. Apparition has some serious potential for being used during a fight, but the feeling of being sucked through a straw is hard to become accustomed to. I guess this is why they had us make the circles, Tom thought as he entered the sling ring class for the first time. Other novices like Tom were all wearing the sling rings and trying to draw a circular portal with it. Some failed and others succeeded. Now that Tom had some practice in drawing eldritch energy, making the portals themselves wasn't so hard. He was able to make a small portal on the first day, but only his finger would be able to go through such a small portal. The masters watching over the training of the novices and were surprised by Tom's success. They heard and saw that it took him a long time to draw upon the eldritch energy, so they didn't expect Tom to do so well during his first day of practice. After that, Tom would practice with the sling ring for a month. During that month, he would also browse through the library of Camartage to learn all that he could. Due to being the Ancient One's student, Tom was allowed into the more restricted side of the library as well. He took advantage of that and tried his best to memorize every book that he was allowed to read. After a month of constant practice, Tom was able to make a good-sized portal with the sling rings. The instructors that watched over his practice told him he passed and to go to the Ancient One to find out his new training. When he met with the Ancient One, she congratulated him and handed him some red robes. Red robes mean he is no longer a novice and has graduated to become an apprentice. Tom was very proud of himself, as he must be one of the youngest apprentices to wear the red robes. After getting his new robes, the Ancient One gave him a lesson on astral projection. The astral dimension, much like the mirror dimension, coexists alongside the material plane. However, to access it, one must successfully be separated from their physical form, existing in a state of pure energy. This is astral projection. Time relative to the material plane is slowed down to a crawl when one enters the astral dimension, to the point that both Tom and the Ancient One were in the astral plane for at least half an hour and returned in the time it took his body to fall to the floor. The astral dimension, also referred to as the astral plane or the ancestral plane, is a parallel dimension where the soul exists outside of the body. The astral plane is the perfect place to gain information. Tom could go into his astral body and snoop anywhere he wants, as long as there aren't any sorcerers around to sense him. He could technically use this to go and watch the making of Captain America. This could be the way for Tom to find out the formula for the super soldier serum. Follow Erskine around for a bit and learn how to turn himself into a super soldier. Maybe he could incorporate the serum into the first ritual he'll perform on himself. These are thoughts for another day, as Tom has to master astral projection first. The Ancient One also explained that she could peer into the astral dimension without leaving her body. Is that not the biggest cheat to slow time and come up with a plan? If the time moves slower in the astral plane, then why not peer into it when you need a minute during a tough battle? When Tom explained this to the Ancient One, she admitted to doing just that in many battles. Tom's teacher also demonstrated that she could make her astral form perceivable in the material world. Although, doing so would cancel the time dilation. The only time Tom would use this would be to prank Dorella into thinking he's a ghost. Other than that, the applications don't seem that big to him. Tom was then taught how to disconnect his astral body from his physical body. That time was spent in a lot of meditation. While he was meditating every day to master astral projection, time passed, and summer came to an end. By the end of summer, Tom has been able to separate his astral body from his physical. This has allowed him access to the astral dimension. However, he could not peek into the astral dimension from his physical body, nor could he bring his astral form into the material world for anyone to see. He would have to practice those at Hogwarts, as the summer has come to an end. Before leaving Camartage, the Ancient One taught Tom how to enter the mirror dimension with his sling ring. She thought that it must be hard for her student to practice at Hogwarts, so she decided to give him access to a perfect training dimension. The mirror dimension allows a sorcerer to train more advanced and dangerous spells without adversely affecting the real world, keep an eye on threats without being noticed, and a prison for those without a sling ring. The final usage is important that a prisoner is left without a sling ring, as it is the only means to escape. Tom already had the ROR for a training ground, but the mirror dimension will definitely come in handy. After gaining access to the mirror dimension, Tom left Camartage for the second time. He opened a portal with his sling ring and left until the next Hogwarts break. Chapter 32, Big Time Skip, Part 2. Time skip to September 1st, 1940 continued. With the beginning of Tom's second year came the start of World War II. Germany invaded Poland on the exact day that Tom rode the train to Hogwarts. During the sorting, Tom didn't see any new first years of note. Tom and Druella once again stayed low in Slytherin House during this year. Although, he may not be able to lay low during the third year. Since the war started, the inbred faction has gotten more and more radical. The council still hasn't acted against Tom or Druella, but Tom can see the signs. If not next year, the year after they will start to interfere with Tom and Druella in some way. Whether that be more advanced bullying or any other number of nasty possibilities. Throughout the year, Tom and Druella continued their morning training, and Tom moved on from rituals and dark magic to other pursuits. He already found a ritual he wants to perform on himself, but he needs a few things as he plans to modify it a bit. That will have to wait, as Tom doesn't have everything he needs just yet. As for dark magic, the school just doesn't have any more material for him to study. What's left to do is practice spells until he's mastered them. Although, Tom does have a large library that his elves have compiled from his properties. He hasn't had much time to go through it, as he's been a bit busy going from one school to another. This year at Hogwarts, other than his normal studies, Tom has been reading all he could on enchantments. Enchanting was fairly easy for him to pick up, as it uses runes and arrays similar to rituals. Tom was a bit disappointed at the level of the Wizarding World's enchanting though. Odin was able to enchant Thor's hammer with a few words, but the best Tom has seen in the piles of books in the ROR is to change a weapon's sharpness or alter its weight. The Wizarding World's level of enchanting seems to be way lower than that of Asgard's. I'll have to check the library at Camartage to see if they have any Asgardian books on enchanting, Tom thought. By the time Christmas break came, Tom mastered all forms of astral projection. When he returned to Camartage, he was placed under a master named Keto. This master was one of the best when it came to all forms of fighting in battle. Tom was to study under Keto until he was thought competent enough to handle himself physically. Keto started him on hand-to-hand combat and beat Tom into the ground almost every day. Keto thought of fighting as something you have to learn through experience, so he made sure Tom experienced real fighting every day. Keto didn't just start attacking him on the first day though. Tom was taught some basic movements for a few days. Those few days were supposed to last longer, but Tom has a perfect memory and picks up on things quickly. Then started the daily beatings. Keto would make it his job to pick apart every attack Tom could throw at him, painfully. Although Tom dreaded the pain of Keto's training, he pushed himself forward with determination. Tom could see how quickly he was progressing, and if that is due to the harshness of Keto's training, then he would gladly go through it. While training under Keto, he also scoured the library for anything about enchanting. Asgardian or not, Tom wanted to learn a higher level of enchanting. He found a few books on it, but not one of them was an Asgardian one. I may have to actually travel to Asgard to learn. That is if they even teach foreigners, Tom thought as he read quietly in the library. By the time Christmas break came to an end, Tom was still training hand-to-hand under Keto. His small body not up to Keto's standard to move forward just yet. Before leaving Camartage, his teacher, the Ancient One, along with some of the masters he was close to, celebrated Tom's birthday with a surprise party. He turned 13 this year. He had no idea how they learned of his birthday until he saw Mimsy standing next to them. He wanted to be mad at her but couldn't bring himself to hate the little elf that just wants him to have a happy birthday. When Tom returned to Hogwarts, he continued his normal schedule. By the time the year came to an end, the inbred faction has started to become a lot more confrontational. On the train ride home from Tom's second year at Hogwarts, the inbreds tried to bully Tom and Druella out of their compartment again. This time, however, they did it on purpose and followed Tom and Druella to pick a fight. They lost, of course, but this just means that the escalation is getting higher and higher. Next year, Tom may have to start laying down the law. He's been waiting for the time when he could stop laying low but thought it best to wait until he was provoked. This way it seems like he's finishing a fight instead of starting one. Yeah, it seems I'll have to start cleaning up Slytherin by next year. I can't have these idiots polluting mine and my ancestors' good name, now can I? Tom thought with a smile as he disembarks the train with an annoyed Druella. She's been especially alarmed at their current situation. Druella doesn't know any of Tom's plans, so she's worried they'll have to go through this for the rest of their time at Hogwarts. She'll be in for a surprise next year. That's for sure. Tom swiftly returned to Camartage after saying goodbye to Druella. He hasn't truly lived at the orphanage in a while. It's been one school to the next and Tom loves every moment of it. Who wouldn't love learning magic? He has the opportunity to learn from two separate schools. It may be hard and demanding, but Tom is living his dreams right now. Chapter 33. Time Skip and Third Year. The summer at Camartage was spent in grueling pain for Tom. He still wasn't up to Keto's standards. Although, he has moved on from hand-to-hand fighting and started practicing with a sword. Keto asked Tom what type of weapon he would prefer. Tom immediately decided on the sword as he is a Pendragon, after all. He has to go with what's in his blood. Also, Tom is hoping that Excalibur is in his Pendragon vault. With proper sword training, he'll be able to wield Excalibur to a higher degree later on. The whole of the summer was spent fighting and training for Tom. He did spend some time here and there studying in the library, but most of his spare time was spent healing from the spars Keto would put him through. By the time summer ended, Keto told Tom that he's ready to move to the next step of his training. Although, that next step wouldn't be revealed to him until Christmas break when he returns. Keto also warned him of slacking on his training while in his other school. He made it very clear that if Tom doesn't keep up with his training, he would make training during Christmas hell for him. On September 1st, 1940, Tom opened a portal with his sling ring to an empty alleyway near King's Cross. He once again rode the train to Hogwarts with his trusted friend Druella. They sat alone in their compartment as they usually do. Suddenly, the door opens, and outside is a new first year with round glasses, brown eyes, and black hair. He was already dressed in his robes, so the boy is most likely from a wizarding family. Oh, sorry. I was hoping the back was empty. I can go if you want? The boy asks as he stands outside the door. No, it's fine. I'm Tom Riddle and this is my friend Druella Rosier. Come have a seat. Tom says as he and Druella stand to greet the new boy. Thanks, I'm Charles Potter, but you can call me Charlie if you want. He says in return and takes a seat across from Tom and Druella. This must be Harry's grandfather. Getting close to the Potters wouldn't be a bad idea, as I could get close to Harry Potter and make sure I have nothing to worry about. That is if he's even born after all I've changed. I know that I'm not going to go all Dark Lord and cause the need for a savior, so there should be no prophesy to slay me, but who knows what could happen in the future. I should play it safe and do my best to not start any prophesy about me. I would rather not have the main character, who could have plot armor, to come after me. Although I may be the main character now. Wow, that was trippy to think about. Tom thought and just decided to go with the flow. It's nice to meet you, Charles. Do you know which house you want to be in? Druella asks as she joins the conversation. Well, I don't really mind any of the houses, but my family is predominantly sorted into Gryffindor. Although I won't know until I'm sorted, I guess. By the way, how are we sorted? My parents refuse to tell me. He asks curiously. We can't tell you either. Think of it as a bit of an open secret. Everyone knows, but it's hidden from the children until you see it yourself. Don't worry though. It's nothing crazy and doesn't take more than a minute usually. Tom says, trying to ease the kid's mind. After a long ride to Hogwarts once again, Charles got to know both Tom and Druella. As they were exiting the train, Charles went to the boats while Tom and Druella got in line for a carriage to ride. Hey, mudblood. Get to the back and give me your place in line. Brighton Lestrange, pompous member of the inbred faction and member of the council called from further back in the line. He was one of the inbreds from a more predominant family. Behind him were both Crabbe and Goyle with sneers on their faces. They are loving every moment of what's happening right now. Ever since their failed attempt to steal Tom's and Druella's compartment, Crabbe and Goyle have been waiting for any moment to poke the bear. No, thanks. Tom replies easily and didn't even spare them a glance. Druella followed along with Tom and ignored them. This only served to make the blood purists angry, and they left their place in line. As they walked up to Tom and Druella, Tom could hear the student grow quiet. The only time these kids would shut up is if something interesting was about to happen. He turns his head to see Lestrange, Crabbe, and Goyle walking up to him. Sigh, this is going to be annoying, but I can definitely use this. Tom thought as a plan forms in his mind. Hey, filthy muggle trash, did you hear me? Get your ass to the back of the line now. Lestrange says as he walks up with two meatheads jeering behind him. And I said no. Now fuck off. Tom replies, staring at the purebloods as if they were a fly buzzing around him. Druella wasn't expecting Tom to reply this way, and looked at him with a surprised expression. Usually, they were quiet and steered away from confrontation when it came to their house. Tom wouldn't act like this. What is he planning? She thought as she knows Tom fairly well as they spent 2 school years together. Upon hearing Tom's reply, the purebloods wanted nothing more than to pull out their wands and start firing away. Although that can't happen as the entire school is currently surrounding them. They may be idiots but they're still Slytherins and will wait for the right time to strike. I see. Lestrange mutters with a furious red face as he walks back to his place in line. I see. Druella says, mimicking Lestrange. I see. Tom mimicked him as well. Many of the students laughed at Druella and Tom's impression, but as they were laughing Druella gave Tom a worried look. Tom just returned her a reassuring smile. That was when Druella knew that Tom was planning something. That something also had to do with their house. She couldn't help but worry about whatever was going to happen. Hopefully, Tom knows what he's doing. She thought as she and Tom boarded a carriage. Chapter 34, Big Reveal. When Tom and Druella arrived at the school, they went to the Great Hall for the sorting and dinner. Charles was sorted into Gryffindor as most of his family was. The Potters are a fairly prominent noble family, so getting a Potter in Gryffindor was good news to the house. Dumbledore seemed quite happy about the whole thing. Other than Charles, a few other notable people were sorted into Hogwarts. Walburga Black was sorted into Slytherin. Even as a child she looked like she has a stick up her ass. Hagrid was sorted into Gryffindor and boy was he huge. Lastly, Moaning Myrtle herself was sorted into Ravenclaw. Well, she won't be Moaning Myrtle in this reality. I have no plans to kill an innocent girl, especially when I would gain nothing from it. Tom thought as he looks for any more interesting people, but found no other first years of note. After a speech by Headmaster Dippet and eating dinner, everyone went back to their dormitory to get a good night's sleep. However, Tom and Druella would not be getting a good night's sleep. Lestrange called a meeting of the Slytherin Council the second Slughorn left after welcoming the first years. He called a public meeting, so every member of the house had to attend. Usually, the council would keep their proceedings closed, but Lestrange probably wants to humiliate Tom and Druella for their earlier transgression. Due to the first years being so young and new to the school, they were excused from all meetings until their second year. It was the same for Tom and Druella when they were first years. When everyone had arrived at the common room and the first years left to get some sleep, the council members stood in the center of the room. The council members are Alabaster Knot, a sixth year that tended to leave Tom and Druella be. Brighton Lestrange, a sixth year that started this whole mess that's about to take place. Lawrence Avery, a seventh year that was on the same side as Knot when it came to Tom and Druella. Emerson Mulciber, fifth year who is probably worse than Lestrange. Briar Rosier, Druella's older brother and a seventh year. His status in the council has fallen since Druella started fraternizing with Tom. Everyone in the room is tired and annoyed. They just had to take a long train ride to a school that could easily open its floor for them to arrive. Now they have to sit through some sort of open council meeting when they want nothing more than to sleep for the classes they have tomorrow morning. What's this all about? Knot asks openly towards Lestrange, as he is the one to call this meeting. The problem is that this dirty mudblood and the blood traitor are still in our proud house. Lestrange exclaims, and a portion of the students cheer him on. We've been through this before. They were sorted into Slytherin, and there's nothing we can do about that. Just ignore them as we've been doing, and in a few years they will graduate as we all will. Nott says as he pretends that Tom and Druella aren't in the room. Druella's brother, Briar, sighs from his place beside Nott. Why can't these people just learn to ignore his sister and her Muggle-born friend? He doesn't agree with his sister's choice of friends, but that doesn't mean he will act against her. He loves his sister and would never do anything to hurt her. I agree. We may not like the mudblood, but there's nothing we can do about it. Briar says, completely leaving his sister out of it. Oh, shut up. We all know that you only hold that stance because your mudblood-loving sister is with him. One of the inbred faction jeered from the crowd. Hearing this, Druella's eyes went straight to the ground and a frown marred her lips. She didn't want to make her brother's life hard, but things just suddenly happened that way. What did you say? Briar almost whispered as went to pull his wand out. Now. Let's all just calm down a bit. Tom says as he walks to the center of the room. It seems that even in a council meeting, where we're supposed to be calm and collected, you children can't even do that. The whole room suddenly went silent as every member of Slytherin directed their gaze to Tom Riddle. You weren't permitted to speak. Move back and keep your mouth shut if you know what's good for you. Nott says as he directs a glare at Tom. Well, as the heir of Salazar Slytherin himself, I'll be taking the privilege to speak from here on out. Tom says as he takes the Slytherin heir ring from his pocket and places it on his finger. That is utter bullshit. There's no way that Salazar would allow his heir to be a filthy Muggleborn. Lestrange exclaims as he stares at the heir run on Tom's finger. The room erupts in commotion as every student started talking at once. Some didn't believe it while others were asking for proof. Meanwhile, Druella was just staring at her friend in complete shock. She knows Tom, and if he says he's heir of Slytherin, then that's probably the truth. As the room filled with more and more voices, Tom stared at the council members for a moment to see their reactions. All of them were surprised, but the inbred members were steaming with anger. Quiet. Nott yelled as he amplified his voice with a bit of magic. The room settled down and everyone was looking to Nott. If you have proof of your claim, please show it. Nott says as he looks towards Tom. I, Thomas Marvolo Riddle, swear on my magic that I am the heir to the most noble and ancient house of Slytherin. Tom pulls his wand and performs a quick lumos to show he still has his magic. The room goes silent as everyone stares at Tom with an open mouth. They couldn't form into words what they felt and thought. They are in the same house as the heir to Slytherin himself. If you were his heir, why didn't you tell us sooner? Briar Rosier said in a disgruntled tone. His sister was shamed heavily for consorting with a mudblood, and yet he was the heir to Slytherin. She should be celebrated for befriending such a person, not shunned and made fun of. If Tom came out with this earlier, Druella and his family would have had a lot more standing in Slytherin House. I wanted to lay low for a while and see how you all acted, and might I say you all disgrace my house. The house of the cunning and ambitious, my ass. You all are just a bunch of children that are defecating on the good name of Salazar Slytherin, my ancestor. Tom says as he uses his sling ring to make portals to the mirror dimension appear below the Slytherin students. They were all too shocked to do or say anything. When the portals below them appeared, they had no time to think nor act and fell through them easily. As they fell through the portals, Tom closed them so no one could escape. With all of the children trapped in the mirror dimension, only Tom and Druella were left behind. So, before I go and deal with a bunch of children, do you have any questions? This marks the end of part 4 of the story I'm Voldemort. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.